Hi again, everybody, and good evening, and welcome to part 4 of our book discovery group. It's Erev Shavuos, and we're getting ready to receive the Torah with joy and with our whole heart, like the traditional bracha, right? Kabbalah Satara b'simcha b'pnimius, with joy and like our whole inner self. Now, there's a big question that we have about Shavuos. If you never thought of this question before, and it's the first time you're hearing this question, it's mind-boggling. Here's the question. We always talk about getting the Torah at Har Sinai, right? But the Jewish people had been learning the Torah since the beginning of time. They'd been learning the Torah in Mitzrayim. Remember how when Yaakov traveled to Mitzrayim for the first time, Yaakov sent Yehuda ahead to set up a yeshiva? And remember how Yaakov learned in the yeshiva of Shem ve'Ever for so many years? And how Avraham Avinu kept the mitzvahs of the Torah? So we had the Torah long before Har Sinai. And if so, what did we actually get at Har Sinai? We didn't get the Torah, right? Because we had it before. We were studying it before. We were doing the mitzvahs before. And the Avos kept the Torah. They were tzaddikim. They kept they studied the Torah. They learned it. They did the mitzvahs. What are we getting? What did we get at Har Sinai? If we got it, if we had it before? And that question is especially relevant to us because what are we getting? What are we celebrating this year on Shavuos? We know that in Yiddishkeit, the special days in our calendar are not just technical. They're not an escape from reality. They're a dive deeper into a deeper dimension of reality. They're not just days that we remember what happened many years ago on a Yom Tif, the same ruchnis dikakayach, the same spiritual empowerment that fueled the events and miracles so many years ago, that same empowerment is present and active this year on this Yom Tov. And if we know what that empowerment is, that's how we can receive it. That's how we can receive it in a way that makes a lasting difference to our lives. So what did we get at Har Sinai? What are we celebrating on Shavuos? And the answer is that we got Hashem himself. That's what we got. Because we had the Torah before, but on Shavuos, we got Hashem himself. We got that part of Hashem within us that's eternal, that's unstoppable. That's when we became the Jewish people. We got an absolute oneness with Hashem that transcends the difference between spirituality and physical matter. You see, before Matan Torah, yeah, we had the Torah, we had mitzvahs, but we did not have the ability to elevate our physical bodies to a state of oneness with Hashem. And also, we were only connected with Hashem if we did the Torah and if we learned the Torah and did the mitzvahs. We didn't have we didn't have that natural inherent Jewish soul, and we didn't have that unstoppable connection. We didn't carry an inner light to literally carry Hashem's light into our relationships, into our challenges, and into our joys. That's the ability, that's the empowerment that we got on Shavuos. We got Hashem himself. Because we had the mitzvahs before, we had the learning before, but we didn't have the relationship. We did not have the oneness that we have with Hashem. And that's what we got at Har Sinai. And that's what we are about to get all over again in less than a week. A few days before we got the Torah, actually on Beis Sivan, today, Hashem told us that we will be his people. Mamlechas Kohanim v'Goy Kadosh, a kingdom of Kohanim and a holy nation. And the Kohanim doesn't just mean priests, it means a people who represent and serve Hashem, people who are carriers of Hashem's light. So on Shavuot, and that's what happened today, a few days before on Beis Sivan. We got our identity. Today we became that Mamlechas Kohanim v'Goy Kadosh, the majestic nation of Hashem. We got our identity, we got our Jewish soul. We got that oneness with Hashem himself. And every year on Shavuos, we get a renewal of that relationship. Hashem says about the Torah, the Medrash tells us, Oisi atem loichem. You are taking me. When we receive the Torah, we're receiving Hashem himself. And on Shavuos, we get that koyach, we get that ability to let Hashem be our personal power, our direct empowerment. We're no longer individual people alone in this world. We're not on our own. Each of us is a carrier of Hashem's light. Each of us is a part of that Mamlechas Kohanim v'Goy Kadosh. We are designed, defined, and powered by Hashem himself, by Melech, Malchei HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by the King of all kings, the Holy One, blessed be he. And that's the new empowerment, the new charge of this relationship happens all over again every year on Shavuos. So what I would want to do today is to connect all of this about Shavuos to what we have been talking about in this series. Last week, we talked about letting go of resentments, and it was a very, very charged topic. There were many excellent questions that came up during our conversation. And over this past week, there were also many questions that came in. By the way, if for whatever reason you don't share during our live session, you're always welcome to share your feedback, your experiences, or your questions by email so that I could address them. It was helpful for me to hear from a few of you over the week. Sterna@energizedliving.org. It was helpful to hear because now I know where we're at and what our group needs, what the missing pieces are in the puzzle that we're all trying to create for ourselves and for each other. So as I looked at the questions that came in over the week, and it was interesting because somebody just asked it in the beginning now at 9 o'clock, right before we started the recording, I realized again how important this topic is, how much space it takes up in our lives, and how difficult and challenging it is. I also realized that some of the information was missed. It was missing because really there is a missing key. There is a missing piece to the puzzle. And we glossed over it. We talked about it last week, but I feel like it was just kind of glossed over. And before we talk about that missing piece, I want to just briefly review the tool that we talked about. And of course, it's just a little overview. And to really get this at length, what we're doing here now, this is officially a book discovery group and conversation and community. But if you really want, I'm a reader. So obviously I believe, the really in-depth understanding and insight, I could write much better than I could speak. Of course, the advantage of this community is that there's interaction and there's a live connection. But really the book, if you want to get a deeper understanding, I think you could get it more from the book than from me talking right now. But let's do a quick overview of what that tool is, okay? Sorry. So everything in the world comes from Hashem, right? That's the truth. That's what we want to proactively try to absorb and live with. That's an awareness that we want to develop over time. But for right now, we are sitting in a puddle of resentment and self-pity. The spotlight, maybe, right? That's what we're talking about. We're talking about when a day that we are. We're sitting in a whole, situation of we feel that resentment creeping up in our hearts, and we feel sorry for ourselves. What's happening in that moment is that the spotlight in our mind is focused outward on another person. And what we want to do is want to turn that spotlight inward to our own hearts, our own thoughts, our own needs, and of course, our emotional hurt. With the spotlight of our mind turned inward, we want to ask ourselves, what is my hurt? And we don't want to say the hurt in terms of the other person. Like, we're not going to say, oh, I'm hurt because she's so mean. I'm hurt because she's such a, that was so disgusting. No, we want to turn it inward and say it in terms of how we feel between us and ourselves. I feel crushed. I feel rejected. I feel dismissed. I feel misunderstood. I feel unwanted, unloved, whatever it is that our hurt heart is telling us. We want to tune into that and really hold that. And as we do that, we recognize that there's going to be part of a hurt that we cannot change. It's beyond us. It's a fact of reality that's beyond us. It's connected to the other person. It's connected to the past. It's connected to a situation that's just beyond our control because it's not within our sphere of influence. And we just need to accept them as those parts of the situation. And that part of the hurt becomes a pain that we have to process. It's not something that we could change. But in every single situation, even the situations that we're feeling very resentful about, there's always at least one thing that we could do for ourselves to address our pain and to help ourselves feel better. And focusing on that, and not just feel better, but actually to learn from our pain, to grow from it, to make a decision going forward that reflects the experience that we learned, the experience that we had. And focusing on that, focusing on how we can help ourselves feel better, and also how we can make our situation actually better, not just in our feelings, but actually in the factual reality. It's two different things, right? Because feeling better takes comfort and compassion and just being gentle with ourselves. And being better very often involves taking steps, taking action that creates change. But both of them together, focusing on what we can do to help ourselves feel better and be better, that's where the healing is. And once we do that, we want to ask ourselves, what do I need? What do I want? What can I give to myself to help myself? And then we want to give that to ourselves on some level in a way that we can. And someone said this last week. She said, I want a mother who loves me and who wants to have a close relationship with me. And of course, we cannot give ourselves a new mother, right? But we could mother ourselves. And when we do that over a period of time, we don't feel sorry for ourselves anymore. We feel complete, we feel whole. We gave ourselves and we continue to give ourselves what we need. And when we're taking care of ourselves, we stop feeling resentful towards the other person, because that's what it looks like to do this work of being there for ourselves. What we get when we try to be there for ourselves, what we get is always so precious. And I know that if you're at the beginning of this journey, it's hard to relate, but everyone who has done this work over a period of time will tell you that what they get at the other end is such a gift. What we get at the other end is precious, so precious that it makes the pain in retrospect worthwhile. We won't want to do it again, but we won't want to have, we wouldn't choose to rewrite the story and delete all that happened, because our story is no longer about resentment and what the other person didn't give us and how the other person controlled us or impacted our lives in such negative ways. The story is not about how sorry we feel for ourselves. It's not about anything that somebody else did. The story becomes how wonderful we feel about ourselves, how empowered we are, and how we could live from a whole different place of giving. Now, all of this was giving to ourselves and to others. Now, all of this was last week's topic, okay? And from the questions that came in, I realized, like I said before, a missing piece. Here is the missing piece. The missing piece is like this. What if I am turning the spotlight inward and I'm asking myself what I need, and I do not have what to give myself? I don't even know what that means. What do you mean, give myself validation and approval? Who am I to give myself a compliment? I want a compliment from another person, right? I want validation and support from another person. Who am I to give that to myself? What is that worth even when I give it to myself? What does that look like? And beyond that, what if I want to give myself unconditional love? What if I want to love myself, but I just don't? Because I never received that in my life. I don't know what that looks like. I don't have it in my pocket. I want to respect myself, but I want to show respect to myself. I want to give that respect for myself, but I just don't have it. What do we do with that? And this question is bigger than letting go of resentments. It's a question that comes up in so many areas in our lives. For example, in our parenting, how can I give and give and give to my child when I am not getting my own needs met? Or how can I love unconditionally when I don't have anyone in my life who does that or who did that for me? So it's not just a question, it's an obstacle. It gets in our way. It's a limitation in so many relationships. Because when it comes to things that we get from people, when it comes to things like validation, approval, support, all those things that we get from people in the book, I think we call it, how did I think? I know, right? Remembering, we call it people goodness, right? If you don't put anything into my cup is empty. If nobody in my life loved me in my childhood, then I don't have that love in my cup. If nobody is validating me, approving of me, giving me compliments, then my cup is empty. And if my cup is empty, over a long period of time, my cup cracks and I feel broken. And I feel like I don't have a self. And I feel like I have nothing to give. There's nowhere to take from. There's nowhere to pull from. And with that, letting go of resentments really is impossible. Because if I am not a someone, then I cannot help myself. If I can't turn that spotlight inward and give myself what I need, then how am I letting go of resentments? I cannot. There's no such thing as talking ourselves out of resentments. It's not something we could say, oh, well, Hashem is in charge. It really came from Hashem. I shouldn't be upset. Shouldn't never actually makes us to a state of could. It doesn't. It just makes us feel worse, right? So the only thing that helps us is when we turn the spotlight inward, because in that moment, we are retaking our role as the key player in our lives. And when we retake that role as the key player in our lives, nobody could control us. People could do stuff to us. People could put stuff in our path, but they're not, it's like we're big. It's like, you know, somebody once told me that they saw a meme, or like it was the days before memes. It was like a little cartoon image. A person was angry at the bus company, Egged in Eretz Yisrael, and the bus pulled off without them, and they banged on the door of the bus, and the quote underneath was the faktal Egged, you knocked on Egged, like, whoa, right? Banged on the bus, he's gonna get that bus company. You didn't do anything. You banged at the bus, okay. Or like in the book, we tell the story of the goat that was drunk and it was jumping, and the older man said, okay, so he jumped, right? The kids were like, whoa, he jumped. And the guy who was more mature is like, okay, so he jumped, right? Why did the older person have that indifference almost to the fact that the drunk goat was jumping? Because he had so much bigger stuff on his mind. He had a bigger mind. He had big ideas. So the goat was interesting, but it kind of shrunk. And that's the gift of perspective, right? If I give you two pieces of paper, and the first paper I say, draw a huge ball, that ball is going to take up most of the paper. But if I tell you in the second paper, I'm going to be like, okay, now draw that same huge ball, but draw it next to a 10-story building. On that second paper, if you're a good artist, that ball is going to be much smaller than the first one. Why? Because in comparison to the building, a 10-story building, even a very big ball is going to be small. And that's what we want to do. We want to make ourselves into that very tall building. And from that perspective, other people's stuff automatically shrinks. And that's not fooling ourselves. This is not about chas v'shalom, perpetuating abuse, dysfunction, and allowing people just to do it, to do all kinds of, be the dumping ground, the garbage dump for everybody's garbage. That's not, it just makes us not fearful. It makes us stand up for ourselves. Somebody in their feedback was saying, no, you can't just do this. You need to stand up for yourself. But being angry at somebody is not standing up for yourself. Being angry at somebody actually drains our energy and doesn't directly impoverishes us. It takes away from our ability to stand up for ourselves, because in that space where we are focusing the spotlight of our mind on the other person, we're diminishing the impact that we have in our own lives. Because if I am not, and that's the key to resentment, that's the only key to resentment. The key to resentment is that I am a someone, and with being a someone, I can help myself. My taking care of myself, if I'm a nothing, it means nothing. And if I'm a nothing, of course I can't give to someone else when I don't have myself. So how do we do this? How do we get a self? What's the solution? What if I am on empty? What if I really look at myself and I don't feel like I have what to give, and I don't respect myself, and I don't love myself? Hashgacha pratis, Hashgacha pratis is Hashem's personal, individual attention to details, right? Hashgacha pratis, this week, we have a solution in the Yom Tov that's coming up. when we will be getting the Torah all over again. The first of the Aseres HaDibros answers this question. Each of the Aseres HaDibros are instructions about what to do, what not to do. Don't have Avodah Zarah, keep Shabbos, respect your parents, don't steal, don't kill. All of these are clear directions, all except for the first one, okay? The first one says, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem, your God, your power. Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am your God, your power, Asher Ha'iseisecha me'eretz Mitzrayim, who took you out of Mitzrayim. Where's the instruction in that? That's the first of the Aseres HaDibros. I am Hashem. What's the do? What's the don't? Right? It seems to be just a piece of information. The Baal HaTanya teaches us that the words Anochi Hashem Elokecha are the most profound instruction in the Torah. It's so fundamental, it encapsulates the entire Torah, all the teachings. If we do this, we basically, everything else is commentary. How? Anochi Hashem Elokecha, 3 words. How do 3 words encapsulate everything? Anochi is a word in Egyptian. It's not a Hebrew word. It means I, but it's not in the Hebrew word. And many commentaries ask, why did Hashem say Anochi? And there's a bunch of different reasons. But if you have been with me before, if you've been part of our learning before, this concept is going to be familiar to you, but I'm just going to repeat it, briefly for everyone here who is new. Whenever we talk about names of Hashem, we know that words by definition are limiting. Words give a shape and a boundary to a concept. So the very fact when we call Hashem a name, we're already not referring to the essence of Hashem, because the essence of Hashem is Ein Sof. It's infinite. Hashem is indescribable. Hashem cannot be defined in words because words are limiting by definition. Words are walls, right? Words are categories. Words give a shape, a color, a definition. And that's the beauty of words also, but it's a limitation. So any name of Hashem is in a certain sense limiting and limited to a certain aspect of how Hashem reveals himself to us in this world. And then there's a part of Hashem that's beyond names and beyond description, and that is Ani. When Hashem is saying I, that's beyond a name, because I encapsulates more than what a name, because I is deeper. Just in interpersonal relationships, right? Who do we have a name for? Hopefully none of us are the type of people who refer to ourselves by first name, right? We don't refer to ourselves by our first names because that's not how we talk, right? It's I. But our names are there for other people to refer to us. So it's like an other to our deeper self. I is a deeper part of who we are. And to say that the Anochi in Egyptian, the word Anochi in Egyptian means, Anochi in Egyptian means a I that is even deeper than the word Ani. It's more indefinable than the Hebrew word. Hebrew word is the holy structure through which Hashem always speaks to us. Egyptian is like, it doesn't exist. It's like an even deeper level, reflecting an even deeper point in the essence of who Hashem is. So when Hashem is saying, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, what Hashem is saying is, Anochi, my dear people, my dear Yidden, here's the order of, here's our relationship. This is what our relationship is going to be about. I am going to take my essence, okay, and I'm going to bring it into this world, not just in this world, but into your bodies. Yud Kei Vav Kei. Anochi, Hashem says, I'm going to take my deepest essence and I'm going to bring it into Yud Kei Vav Kei. Yud Kei Vav Kei represents Hashem's, the order. It's called Seder Hishtalshelus, the order of how Hashem's light is manifest, how Hashem's light evolves, if I could use that word, how Hashem brings his light into this world. A Medrash also says, which is it's brought down in a mimer of the Lubavitch Rebbe, was a beautiful, beautiful mimer, that Yud Kei Vav Kei also represents the body of a person, because Hashem didn't just come into the world. Hashem didn't just invest his Anochi in the world. Hashem invests, and not even in our soul. Hashem invested himself in our bodies. The Yud is our head. The Hey is our 5 fingers. The Vav is that, the length of our body. And the last Hey is the Hey of our toes, of the 5 toes that we have. And the question obviously is, when I heard this, I'm like, wait, well, what about the other 5 fingers? Isn't there 10? And what about the other 5 toes? Aren't there 10? But the Hey, when you spell it, there's 2 ways of spelling a Hey. One is a Hey, just 1 letter, 5. And another way of spelling the word Hey, I'm sorry, I'm almost finished this. This is just for people who appreciate this. We'll get right back down to the practical, okay? Give me 1 more minute. But this is just fascinating. And if you get lost, go take a cup of coffee, come back in a couple of minutes, we'll be done with this idea. But the Hey has 2 Heys. Hey, Hey, that's how it sounds out. So, and that represents in Hebrew language, the rules of grammar, that represents a complete Hey. It's called Mully, it's a Miloi, a full essence of, full presence of Hashem. So let me go back to on track, okay? Yud, K, Vav, K, Anochi, Hashem says, I am taking my essence, my deepest part of myself, which is indescribable in any name, and I am bringing it down into this world and into your body. And your mission is Elokecha, to make and to accept and receive and recognize that this essence of Hashem, my light, my majesty, my infinity, is your Chayach and your Chayas, your life force and your empowerment. Chaychacha v'chayusecha, your energy, your empowerment, and your life force. So that's Anochi Hashem Elokecha, okay? The energy, the life force of Hashem, the Anochi, the deepest part of Hashem comes into this world. And our mission is to recognize that it's Elokecha. That's our personal empowerment. There were 2 midrashim. One said that the Torah was, when Hashem said, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, every person heard it. First of all, Hashem was speaking in first person. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. And every person felt, Imi ha'ashchina medaberes. Hashem is speaking directly to me, not to us, to me, making eye contact, so to speak, individualized to me. And that was reflected in another medrash, which says that the voice of Hashem was louder for people who needed the volume turned up, and lower, more gentle for people who needed the volume turned down. The energy, the force of Hashem's voice was customized according to each and every individual person. So the instruction of the first Dibra, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, it sounds like it's just a piece of information, right? It's the first of the 10 commandments, and it just sounds like information, but it's an instruction. It's to let the essence of Hashem become our personal, private source of empowerment. And that is our answer to our question. Because if people and things and places and money would be our source of life, then we would have a problem when those people are not giving us what we need or what we want. But people are not our source of life. People were never meant to be the source of our life. Hashem is. And the only way we could be a true self, the only way we could be a healthy person, is when we keep the first of the Aseres HaDibros, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, receive Hashem as our personal power. Do the work that it takes to receive genuine, practical empowerment from Hashem himself. The work that we discussed in previous weeks, and we're going to keep discussing it, coming back to it, but the point we're making right now is that this is the missing link. Yeah, we don't have a self. Yeah, I don't feel like I have what to give. Well, that's because the socket that we are plugging into is broken. We have to put it into a socket that is actually charged with live electricity. And then we can have everything what we need. And that's our missing link. If we don't have a self, we have to plug into the source of our self. We have to plug into Anochi Hashem Elokecha. And this is real work. It's the hardest of the Aseret Dibros. It came first because it's the hardest. Everything else is commentary. It's an avodah, it's real work. It's not just a piece of information. It's the first and foremost instruction. We have to make Hashem our real exclusive power. And the more power we get from Hashem, the stronger our cup is, the stronger the core of our self is, and the stronger we are, the healthier relationships we can have. Because for every ounce of brokenness in ourselves, for every ounce in our hearts where we are not plugged into Hashem as our source, and we're plugged into otherness as our source, we're plugged into people, places, and things as our source, for every ounce of that brokenness, we come to our relationships needy and wanting. And then even our giving is a form of taking, because we come to our relationships with a broken cup. We come to our relationships like poor people, like beggars, who are so needy and desperate for love. Our core is empty and broken. We don't have that sense of self. But when we are a strong, complete self, and we're that 10-story building, or 100 limitless story building, it doesn't mean that we no longer need or want people goodness. We still want that. We still want and need validation, approval, support, acceptance, love, understanding, all the good stuff that we can get from other people in our lives. But all of that is a gift. It's a delight we could enjoy. It's not a desperate, desire and an unmet need that we have to, we're so desperate to get that we'll kill ourselves to get it. We'll twist ourselves into pretzels. We'll do things that are bad for us. We'll hurt ourselves in order to get that validation, that approval, that likes from other people. We're not going to do that. By accepting Anochi Hashem Elokecha, by opening our hearts, in a couple of days, we're going to get the Torah again, all over again. If we listen to those words as they are said in Shul, and we open our hearts, and during the days before we could prepare ourselves to do this, emotionally and psychologically, spiritually, prepare ourselves for that moment, to open our hearts, to receive Anochi Hashem Elokecha, to recognize I am a person who's designed, defined, and powered by Hashem himself. And let's open our hearts up to that infinite empowerment, because without the self, without this awareness, we cannot even hold the love and the goodness that we do get from other people. When someone compliments, when someone gives us a good word or they compliment us, we don't believe them. There were times in my life when somebody would say something nice to me, I'd be like, yeah, right. I didn't believe it. I didn't know how to take it in because I didn't have a cup to hold it in, right? Somebody loved me. I didn't trust the love. And so Anochi Hashem Elokecha, again, it's not an intellectual piece of information that we need to remember once a year on Shavuos. We have a God, yeah, let's remember him. No. It's everything we need to do. And it's the empowerment that we need to get everything in our lives done, to get our life back when we lose it, to give ourselves a self. And how do we do this on a very practical level? By learning about Hashem, by visualizing Hashem's presence, really being present with Hashem, thinking about Hashem, increasing the value that our bodies feel when we think about Hashem. How? By taking it in, by opening ourselves up and really being present with that, consciously plugging into that energy, opening our minds and hearts to receive directly from Hashem. And a specific time during the day when we do this is, of course, when we say Shema, but even before we say Shema, every day when we say Modeh Ani, we want to consciously receive that soul, that godly light, that infinity that Hashem is giving us, that Anochi Hashem Elokecha that Hashem is giving us, that we recognize when we say Modeh Ani. We want to consciously receive it for the day. We want to visualize it until we see it in our mind's eye. Think about it until we actually feel it in our bones. And when resistance comes up about it, we want to call the resistance a lie, recognize the lie in the resistance, to let, very often we talk about downloading the good energy, but I believe that if we, in addition to downloading the good energy, we also have to delete the viruses in our systems. And to do that, we have to tune in to the negativity, to the toxicity in our hearts, to that voice of criticism, of negativity, of tearing ourselves down, and we have to call it a lie. because that's also part of letting Anochi Hashem Elokecha become our personal truth. We have to get rid of what's getting in the way and blocking it in order from it settling in our hearts, because we know Hashem says about ego, you know, Hashem's Shekhinah rests everywhere, but Hashem says, I cannot sit where the ego sits. I cannot sit where there is ego. And what's ego? Ego is the invented version of ourselves when we don't have our true self. Ego is the lies that we believe about ourselves, the toxic lies that we need a facade. We need to look good. We need to feel. We need the money. We need the likes. We need the approval. We need all types of people, places, and things in order to be a self. So getting rid of that, getting rid of those lies, getting rid of that ego, creates the space where Anochi Hashem Elokecha could take root in our hearts and become an actual part of our bodies and of our consciousness. And of course, doing this work enables us to receive the Torah with joy and with our whole heart. So let's just open, I'm going to open this to discussion. Wow, it's so late. I apologize that I did this again. Okay, I'm going to read the chat, but if you want to speak up, go ahead for it. Go ahead. Somebody's asking a good question. Which chapter of the book is this in? This is part 2 of the book. I'm sorry, I thought I know it by heart, but I don't. It's in principle 2 of the book, part 2 of the book, under Shema. Go ahead. Okay, these two are fantastic questions. First of all, if all we need is Hashem, why did Hashem give us so many people in our lives? That's a fantastic question. And number 2, how do we actually get that power? So first of all, I'm so glad you asked the first question, especially because of course we need people in our lives, but we don't need powers in our lives. Hashem is supposed to be our only power. Why did Hashem make it look like other people are our powers? And by power, I want to say this: power is a force of action or inaction. People are just present in our lives. They're there to share the journey. They're there. We're meant to connect with each other, to support each other, to cheer each other on, to hold hands and walk through this life together. We're not meant to depend on each other. Do you hear the difference? Someone's having feedback, so someone's having noise, so I'm just muting. If you want to unmute yourself again, unmute yourself. Hashem gave us so many people in our lives because we do need each other. We're one. We're supposed to walk through life together. We're never supposed to do it on our own, and we need the support. The minute you make a person into your power, the minute you decide that this person could make me, then that person could also break me. If he could make me, he could break me. And if he could break me, then he could make me. But we only have one maker, and that is Hashem. No person is our maker or breaker. And this doesn't mean that we don't have appreciation for people. It's just recognizing that every single thing in our lives, what I have comes from Hashem. What you have comes from Hashem. And of course, we still have to take responsibility for our behavior. And of course, we want to and need other people in our lives. That's what makes the world a beautiful place, and that's what makes our lives meaningful and possible. And the second question: how do we actually get the power? I love this question because every day Hashem gives us the power. You know, the Kotzker Rebbe once said, "Where is Hashem?" Somebody asked the Kotzker Rebbe, "I'll give you 5 rubles if you tell me where Hashem is," and he said, "I'll give you 10 rubles if you tell me where He is not." Right? But then the other person said, "But tell me, you know, where does Hashem go? Where is Hashem in the room?" He says, "Well, wherever you let Him in." So which one is it? Is Hashem everywhere, or is Hashem only wherever we let Him in? Hashem is everywhere, but we could only experience Hashem wherever we open our hearts to experiencing Hashem. So how do we actually get the power? We are already getting the power. As soon as we stop plugging into other people, as soon as we turn our hearts towards Hashem and just open our hearts and desire Hashem's power in our lives, recognize it, that's how we start, that's how we get rid of the clutter that's getting between us and Hashem. Hashem's energy. Think about a river that's flowing to us, right? You don't have to do anything to make the river flow. all we have to do is take away that, what's it called? The thing that blocks the water from getting to us. Take away the barrier, take that away. Or to say it differently, it's like the sun is shining. All we have to do is pick up the shades. Stop pulling down the shades. And pulling down the shades is depending on other people, deciding that other people are our powers. Doing resentment, doing self-pity, all of that are our actions. If you want to start, a very good way to start is simply saying Moida Ani every morning. Another good way to start is just by saying a blessing, a bracha, every time you eat food. And especially foods that have the bracha, the blessing of Shakol Niyabadvari, that every single thing in this world exists because of Hashem's word. That's a very good place to start. And you know what else? Here's another very practical way. I know a lot of people, before they go shopping, they put $1 in the pushka, in the charity box, and they say, Hashem, please help me find something, because my shopping only depends on you. And the Lubavitch Rebbe encouraged women to have tzedakah pushkas on the walls of our kitchens, and to give tzedakah every time before we cook. Why? To show that our cooking is infused with a prayer, that my cooking comes out good, not because I'm a good cook, but because Hashem has blessed this moment and this day and my work. It's just a beautiful all these little things. We have a mezuzah on the door of our houses and on the door of our rooms. It's also to remind ourselves, Yiddishkeit is built to remind ourselves of Hashem's power. So we just have to start being conscious of all the things that we're doing and allow ourselves to experience it and be present with it. You know what just happened here? Look, I wanted to say what just happened. Okay, this is, you just heard something so meaningful from somebody you don't even know, right? But hearing it from somebody who did this work on a personal level, and sharing their story, that took the knowledge from knowledge into practical, right? That made it a physical human experience. And now you could take that and make it and absorb it as a physical, tangible, practical idea. And that, my dear friends, is the power of a community through with other people. So there's a group that just started in Borough Park. And I want you, if you're listening to this in Borough Park, because I took on a resolution, a hachlata, to try to get as many groups as possible started in at least in my local community. And I want everyone to do, you could do that in any community, but I'm starting here in my immediate proximity. If you live in Borough Park and you're listening to this and you are part of a community, please let me know. info@energizedliving.org, let Chayla know. And and if you want to be part of a community, call me or email also info@energizedliving.org. We are making it a very big priority to help people get into community. There's nothing like it. There's really nothing like it. What helps me, someone writes, is telling myself, this is the way Hashem wants me to serve him now. And I'm here to do the Hashem's will. It can't be better than the situation that Hashem gave me. And what she's saying this is in response to somebody else asking a question. Whoa, there is a beautiful conversation going on here on this community. So thank you very much, people. I'm not going to read it because everyone who's on it can read it. Okay, so that's an excellent question. I want to stretch it a little bit. What's the difference between resignation and acceptance? Resignation is when we resign to a reality that maybe is not ideal and maybe it's even unhealthy, but we resign even though we could do something about it. Where acceptance is that, we can't do anything about it, therefore we accept it with grace and dignity and courage, right? And this is a little bit off topic. I want to just connect it to the topic. Our topic today is, how do we give ourselves what we don't have ourselves? And the answer is, of course, there are many things we don't have ourselves, right? The only way we could give ourselves what we don't have ourselves is by plugging into someone bigger than ourselves, someone who has everything we might possibly need, and that is Hashem. By plugging into Hashem, by actively, consciously receiving power, energy, light, joy, dignity from Hashem, we can give ourselves whatever we need. Okay, now, and I want to just, before we answer your question, I want to go back to what that looks like in practical terms. It means that, you know, I'm nervous. Let's say I'm about to speak somewhere and I get nervous right before. I'm like, okay, you know what? You know why you're nervous? I learned to tell myself that and to recognize that whenever I get nervous, it's because I'm thinking this is about me. This is about me, you know, doing my thing. But then I'm like, okay, Shani, just move out of the way. This is not about you. Plug into Hashem's light and let it flow. It's not, and just get out of the way. That's just one example. Or, you know, if I need to make, my mother told me this, and I was blown away. She said she had to make a difficult phone call. And it was hard for her. She didn't want to have to do it. It was very, very difficult. So she said, I said a kapitel tehillim, I took a deep breath, and I made the phone call. I asked Hashem to be with me, and he was with me. So it's asking Hashem for help and then taking the action. I almost want to say act as if he is giving you the help, but I don't want to say act as if, because it's not an act, he is. But what you need to do is you do the work and let Hashem get it done. You do the work and let Hashem get it done. A friend of mine shared that she had a sudden, you know, a bunch of extra guests. So she said, Hashem, I'll serve the food. You be the caterer. Meaning I'll try my best to make this work, but you make it work. So we do our best and only Hashem gets it done. And that's not just about getting things done. That's also about having courage, having dignity, having a sense of inner peace. And how does this relate to other people is because whenever you start feeling sorry for yourself, that is the opposite of feeling Hashem in yourself. The opposite of feeling Hashem in ourselves is feeling sorry for ourselves. The opposite of feeling Hashem in ourselves is feeling resentful of other people. But resentment and self-pity are two opposite sides of exactly the same coin. So whenever you find your mind wandering into self-pity and a 3-day Yom Tif, 3 days, 6 meals, cooking, cleaning, serving, or guest, you know, if you're a guest, it's also this high energy, high level of emotions. There's a lot of room for resentments to fester. I don't know any woman who doesn't feel resentful at least once or twice or 3 times over a 3-day Yom Tif. It's very, very hard not to. But the point is not to never feel resentful. The point is to recognize when we do and to crawl right out of it. My father used to say, a chassid, he used to imitate Rabbi Yisrael Neveler, didn't say a letter lamed. Instead of a lamed, he would say a yud. So every time he had to say lamed, like lollipop, like my granddaughter says, ayayi pop, which doesn't say a lamed. She doesn't say the L. She says a yah instead of a L, right? So he used to say, a chassid is a zevi aveyimo, kichta yayin, kichta yais. If you know Yiddish, a chassid is like a worm, crawls in and crawls out. You know, he gets stuck, but then he crawls right out. You know, like but that's what does that mean? That yeah, we fall in, but we crawl out. We get out. So we're gonna fall into resentment, and you'll know that you're in resentment by here are 2 clues. Number 1, you're feeling sorry for yourself, or number 2, your spotlight in your mind, you're having this tape playing judgment, criticism, negativity, commentary about the other person and the other person's behavior. The minute your commentary in your mind is about the other person's behavior and what they're doing, what they should have been doing, what they would have been doing, what they were supposed to be doing, what they didn't do, that's resentment right there. And we want to turn the spotlight inward and say, what do I need? What do I want? What's hurting me? How can I help myself? How can I give myself what I need? And then the inner resistance in your voice will say, well, I needed a compliment or I needed help. Well, if you need help, just ask for it, right? Well, I asked for it and I'm not going to get it. Okay, so then something has to change. Make one less kugel, make one less dish, or ask again, or hire help. My point is, there are certain things in our lives that are unmanageable and that are going to be painful and difficult and that are beyond our ability to control. But there are so many things in our lives that we could change and we could make a difference in. And the only thing that's getting in our way is sitting in that driver's seat and recognizing that we are the person who makes the biggest impact in our lives and owning that. And that doesn't liberate other people of their responsibilities to us. That puts us in a position of trust, of strength, of dignity, and courage to ask people for help when we need that help, but asking in a way that nurtures connection and closeness and positivity. Somebody was once sharing with me, somebody shared with me actually today that, you know, she had to go somewhere, and she scheduled her whole day around that outing where she had to go. And just before she was getting ready to go, and it involved getting ready the kids, and she needed her husband's help, and he knew, and she was counting on that help. Just before then, as they're getting ready, he gets on the phone and he's totally distracted. And she started feeling herself slipping into resentment. And with that resentment came negative energy, disempowerment. Forget it. I don't need your help. You go. Leave me here. I don't have to go. I just won't even go. I won't bother. But because she was in doing this work and really, you know, focusing on all this work, she's actually part of a community, of a group where they're talking about these things. Suddenly her mind recognized where she was going, and she's like, whoa, hold it. Yes, I am overwhelmed. Okay, I'm overwhelmed. Take a deep breath, take ownership of the fact that I am feeling overwhelmed, calm myself down. And hey, by the way, do you mind getting off the phone? Because I actually need your help. It was a 360-degree turnaround. A tiny moment, but literally there was a pattern here where he would space out, and then she would freak out and get lost in a puddle of despair and real disempowerment that could go on for hours, and it could have ruined her night. It literally could have ruined her night, and who knows what would have happened the next day. But just this moment, catching herself moving into resentment and saying, hey, I'm overwhelmed. Take a deep breath. Let me calm down. I can do this. It's okay. Talking to herself, taking care of herself. And then from that place of calm, say, I don't like this. Please get off the phone and be fully present. I really need your help. Asking with that dignity, and her husband was responsive to that, because most people are responsive to that. If she would have shut him down and yelled at him and, beat him up with her words, he would just slink into his shoes and become dysfunctional. But she picked him up, and he stood up to the plate and helped her. That's a teeny example. But this is what I'm talking about. It doesn't mean that we're going to do everything for ourselves. It doesn't mean that other people are going to do everything for us. The game changer is, means Hashem is our power. And if he's our power, it means we never, ever have to relinquish our seat in the driver's seat of our lives. We are in charge. We are holding the reins. Our choices make the biggest difference in our lives. So now somebody's asking a question, well, Hashem is our power. What does it mean? Like sometimes, like Hashem runs the show. We don't do anything. Only Hashem gets it done. So how do I know if I'm trying to do something and it's not working out? How do I know if I'm supposed to stop and give up and just accept that Hashem is in charge? So I want to say two things about this. First of all, the honest assessment that we want to do is here is, in this moment, am I recognizing Hashem as the only power? And is it only the facts of the reality that's getting in my way? Or is it the other person that's getting in my way? Is it my fear of the other person that's getting in my way? Is it my fear of their reaction? Am I intimidated of them? Am I afraid of rocking the boat? Am I afraid of showing up and doing what I know needs to be done? That's one question, to be honest. What's getting in my way here? What is the fact? What's making me say it's impossible? Is it Hashem actually? Is it a fact that cannot be changed? Or is it a fact that I just don't want to change because I'm too afraid? That's one question. And the other thing is, it's really connected. Am I afraid of other people? Is there any fear in my heart of other people? And sometimes we say, you know what, I actually, in this situation, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to have to deal with the other person's bad mood. So I'm going to resign to this, and that's also healthy. But my point is, going back to the situation of the cleaning lady, you know what? It's such a personal situation. If you feel that someone's taking advantage of you, then and I feel like a nothing, then I'll be angry at the other person. I won't say anything, but it will sour my relationship with the other person. But if I feel like I'm okay, and I'll just question with genuine curiosity, hey, what's going on? I feel a little bit bad. I'm wondering about this or that. And it's just a conversation. It's an open-ended conversation. You know what I mean? And hopefully that other person will be honest. And if they're not, then that's also part of the growth. But there's not a clear-cut answer. When are you supposed to resign and when are you supposed to accept? We have to accept what could never be changed. I mean, we have to accept what could never be changed. But if there is something that we could do, and it's just fear that's holding us back, or just insecurity, or self-doubt, or self-criticism, or perfectionism that's holding us back, then, which is really, all of these words are just forms of fear. If fear of another person is holding us back, then that is avodah zarah. That's not Anochi Hashem. That's the opposite of Anochi Hashem. I want to just address one more question that somebody asked. How can you support, validate, empathize with someone who has so low confidence in themselves, and when you understand and apply these concepts and you feel strongly about them, but the other person doesn't? I don't think this is something we could give to another person. A person needs to get it themselves. Anochi Hashem Alekecha was a very personal instruction and a personal empowerment. And each and every one of us needs to do it for themselves. And when we tell other people this, it comes off as criticism. It comes off as holier than thou, better than thou. And I haven't had any experience where it was effective. But what you could do is invite that other person to a group. And if it's a man, that is a challenge, because we don't have any men's groups going on now, but we are going to the Ezras Hashem, hopefully in the near future. But if it's a woman, just tell her about a group and say, hey, how about coming on? This is something I've been listening to. This is a community I've been part of. And how about joining? I think you might like it. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was so meaningful. And welcome. Come again. Chaya, thank you. There's a few people who share often, and you know who you are. I don't have to say your name. Maybe you're still listening, or maybe you went off to do your thing. But I just want to say a huge thank you on behalf of everybody who was part, because those things get cut out of the recordings, and that's what helps people share. But they're so valuable and precious to every person who listens. I think that's more precious than anything I could ever say. It's real, it's honest, it's wholehearted, it's wonderful. Before everyone goes, I just want to say that a lot of people, a lot of women, when it comes to Shavuos, we think about Shavuos as a men's Yom Tov because it's a men's Torah. And I don't have to elaborate on that. It's like so many women have this feeling about that the Torah belongs to the men and the cheesecakes belongs to the women, But when we do this work, we realize that the Torah doesn't just belong to the people who study it full time. It really belongs to each and every one of us, because Hashem gave it to us personally. Anochi Hashem Alekecha is Hashem talking to each of us individually and personally and intimately. And Hashem wants a relationship with each and every one of us. And that's what we have. And that's what we're celebrating on Shavuos. I want to just remind everybody to actually go to Shul on Shavuos to hear the Aseret HaDibros. There's something so beautiful about it. And to bring our children, if Hashem is really giving us the Torah and we really want to get that empowerment and we really want to feel it and tune into it on a visceral level, on a physical level, let's bring our kids and let's tell them that they matter, because Hashem can't give the Torah without the kids being there. Just like Hashem didn't give the Torah without the kids being there. And it's such a beautiful message that we could give them. So it's a Jewish thing to get the Torah for every one of us at Matan Torah. I want to wish each and every one of us that we should be zeicha to receive the Torah with joy and with our whole heart, with simcha, with pnimius, and that we should have the Torah chadasha me'iti teitze, the brand new Torah, which is just the Mashiach's Torah, the light, the new light that we're going to have with the coming of Mashiach, we'll learn Torah and hear the Torah from Mashiach himself. And when we have that this Shavuos, we should have that ultimate Kabbalas Torah. Thank you all for joining, for being part of this. I'm sorry that it ended up being longer than usual. I also see that there are some questions that we didn't answer, but Ezra Hashem, I will try to get to them next week. Or if you want to email to me privately, do that. Sherna@energizedliving.org, or better, 917-687-9712 is my WhatsApp number. You could WhatsApp voice note and I will try to voice note back. Thank you so much. Have a good Yom Tif.